If you want to have everything you could possibly want and more, then be a good person. The better a person you are, the more likely that is to happen. That doesn't mean that you're completely protected against getting cut off at the knees, but there's no better strategy. Imagine I take two people and I say, okay, I'm going to give you $100 and you have to give some of it to the person right beside you. And they can either agree or disagree with the split, but if they disagree, you don't get anything. So imagine it's a crowd and they're all watching you. And I offer you $100 and you have to share it with the person next to you. And you say, would you like to take $70? And the person says, well, I'm not sure that's fair to you, but if it's okay, yes. But then everyone else sees that. And now they all have an opportunity to pick who they're going to play with next. Well, you're not going to get picked last, are you? So, but imagine we expand that game and we say, you want to be the person that everyone wants to play with. Well, then all you have in your whole life is invitations to play. And how are you going to be that person? Be productive, straightforward, generous. Don't do things you know to be wrong. Don't lie. Don't be careless. Act so that you can speak of what you do. The purpose of living ethically is so that you have some peace. I still believe that, genuine accomplishment, but it's ethical. It's always ethical accomplishment. Genuine ethical accomplishment is the best source of security. Doing something good, right. If you've done it for yourself, that's good. But if you do it and other people are in on it and along for the ride, that's also good. And sometimes that's better to bring people along. I want to win in a way that makes you win. So when I look at successful people, they're really good at something. They're reliable, right? You can count on their word. They're generous. And they have a wide connection network, which becomes more and more valuable as you get older. So it's one advantage that older people really have over younger people. They have a connection network, and a connection network is, you could be connected to 1,000 well-connected people. Okay, that means you are connected to the entire world. Right, it's unbelievably valuable. Jocko was telling me when we talked this week, he's this tough character, man. And he could have been a criminal, no problem. And he knows that perfectly well. I'm not saying that as a slur on his character, partly because I believe the Nietzschean dictum that a lot of morality is just cowardice. Whatever he might be, he's not a coward. So the question is, well, what socialized this brute? Well, he was taught in the Navy SEALs, take care of your team. That's your fundamental purpose. And he noted, and we had a long discussion about this, the successful guys, man, they've got your back, right? You know that above all. If you aspire to a leadership position among those brutes, let's say, and you aren't someone they know to have your back, they're not following. You're not going to make it. The capacity to exercise power, that's really important. You need that. It has to be part of you for you to be admirable. It's like you could be a badass son of a... Yes, I see that. And that way I'm somewhat intimidated by you. And that's actually a testament to your moral virtue, that you have enough force and power to be intimidated. But then if you can encapsulate that and take that potential for power and harness it to this broader good, well, that's unstoppable. I think you can be a slave or a tyrant, or you can negotiate. Those are your options. And we default to slavery and tyranny, and people fool themselves into thinking that it's okay what they're doing. I'm sacrificing myself for the children, and that's okay. I'm sacrificing myself for my husband's career, and that's okay. I'm working at a job I can't stand because I need to support my wife and children, and that's okay. I mean, sometimes that is okay, but it has to be out, clear, in the open, talked about, negotiated, discussed. If you feel insecure and less and ashamed and all of that, that you have to take stock. Well, if you have some faults and you feel insecure and inferior because of that, well, you should. If you're plagued by feelings of inferiority, you should rectify the most obvious inferiority. I would say that you have to rectify an inadequacy when it's clearly an impediment to your goal. The negative emotions can be a pathway to transformation. I'm not trying to romanticize them. They can crush you completely and leave you with nothing, for sure. And they can go badly astray. But there's lots of pathways. If you're angry about something in the world, well, that's an indication that that's, in some sense, your problem. You can find it in shame. You can find it in guilt. You can find it in conscience. You can find it in anger. It's speaking to you in a moral sense. This shouldn't be that way. Well, maybe you're the person who should do something about it in some manner. Maybe it'll take your whole life to figure out how to do that. Shame, that's a good one. What am I ashamed of? Well, can you fix any of that? Because you might ask yourself, let's say you're so ashamed and so crushed that you're nihilistic and you can't see any hope for life. You're just done. You might think, well, what if I was less ashamed? When something terrible happens to you, you don't understand it. So then you might say, well, if you don't understand something that's happening to you, how can it be terrible? Because doesn't terrible mean that you understand it? And the answer is, well, you understand things in stages. And the first way you understand a terrible thing is by freezing in terror or running. That's the understanding. It's not conceptual, it's embodied and emotional. And so, event terror, that's the first category. Okay, now, the next question is, how do you get out of the terror? Well, you realize that nothing truly dangerous is happening. Well, what if something truly dangerous did happen? Then you elaborate your view of the world to the point where you're no longer vulnerable to that terrible thing. And that's extremely difficult. So the memory of something terrible stays terrible until you effortfully process it and decompose it into, well, often into a much more sophisticated map of the world. What your brain wants from you in relationship to a traumatic memory is indication that you're no longer vulnerable to the same problem. That's what memory is for, right? You remember something bad and you process it so that you change your interpretation or your behavior or the situation or whatever you can change so that it isn't going to happen in the future. If you do that thoroughly, you'll generally let yourself rest. You need a philosophy of bad. You need a philosophy of evil. You have to understand it so that you're no longer a victim of it. Because otherwise you can't put the event in a context. And sometimes that means the development of real philosophical sophistication. And that can help because then you can start to separate out malevolence from benevolence, because maybe you're afraid of any intimate relationship now because it's been contaminated with that. And everything's fuzzy and foggy. And so you need to understand the person who did that, at least to some degree, so that you can separate that person out from all the other people that you encounter in situations that might be reminiscent of it. Generally, you stand, confront, decompose, understand, adapt. But just because you generally do that and it's the best bet doesn't mean it's definitely going to work. It's just the best shot you have at it. You know, you listen to someone tell you about their life. It's so typical, so frequent, catastrophic occurrences, you know, and yet people stumble forward positively, and it's a miracle. You can get a really long way with very small changes, incremental changes, micro habit changes. So aim low. Problem with a big goal is that it's daunting enough so that it might paralyze you, and there's a high probability of failure. You want a goal that you can do, but that requires some improvement on your part. Because you want to attain the goal, that's satisfying, but then you want to make yourself into the thing that can attain goals. So you're pursuing a goal, but you're also pursuing the goal of transforming yourself at the same time. You're doing both of those at the same time. Strive to manifest the faith necessary to make things better rather than worse. Pray that you have enough terror to be frightened out of your own deceit, and strive to be grateful regardless. That's good enough.